Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm going to be looking at the Pro Nature AG mod today for Farming Simulator 17. This is a Giants editor import, not a placeable. So if you're looking for a placeable, then this won't be what you'll want. This is basically sewage treatment works, I believe it's kind of listed as. I've got this from the maru.net site by Black Sheep Modding. Really large building, very good detail, whatever. So yeah, we've got some bits and pieces here. We put in our liquid manure, so obviously you will need to get access to liquid manure to make this work, and from that we get solid fertilizer, liquid fertilizer, and also compost. So we're going to need to work with some fill types and registering fill types to get the compost to work properly. There's a couple of ways we can do that. We can work with the reg fill type script, which will register compost, but what that will do, or the limitations of that script, will only register it as a fill type. So it will be able to, you'll be able to use it or put it into a tipper trailer and transport it and whatever else. So if you want to create a sell point on your map to just take the compost and then sell it, that's fine. But other than that, it won't really be much use to won't be able to use it for much else. You won't have the tip on ground function that's now within Farming Simulator 17 or any of the other functionality of it. So what I'm going to do is instead use the additional map types script, which will then give me some extra functionality. I could then use that compost to fertilize my fields, and also it will give me the ability to use the tip on ground functionality of Farming Simulator 17. So I'm going to use that script to get that side of it working. Obviously the liquid manure, the fertilizer and liquid fertilizer are part of the in-game stuff, so we won't need to mess around too much with that. It will be just automatically registered by the game, so that's great. So this is what we're going to be working with. There's a couple of things on here that we need to tweak first of all. This particular mod comes with some language textures, so for this particular main sign here, I'm going to take a guess then and say that's in German. If that's fine, you want to go with the German sign, then no edits will be required. But if you want to have this in either French or English, I believe that's the only two alternative languages that this particular mod offers. If you wanted to change it to something else, then you'll need to do that yourself by editing this particular texture in DDS, in paint.net or something like that. But for simplicity, I'm just going to stick with changing it over to English and show you how to do that. And then again, with our main screen down here, the actual operation screen, again we have a language, some language textures. So again, I'm going to assume as standard this is going to be in German, and we can change this to French or English as well if we choose to. Again, I'm going to go with English, so I'm going to hopefully show you how to do that as well. And then I'm going to just basically put the mod together, get it into the map, and bring all the bits and pieces, the scripts and everything together, and get it all up and running. So what we need to do first of all then is, before we bring it into the map, is identify those textures, because we need to actually edit the i3D for this particular mod, and it will be much easier to edit it before you bring it into the map than after. Once you've brought it into the map, you will then have to find what you're looking for within the map 01 or 02 or whatever it might be called i3D, which will have a lot more in it than the actual just basic sort of structure of the mod itself. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. If we actually come into the mod itself, I'm going to open this in Notepad++, and you can see we've got our file IDs and our path file names to our textures. If I scroll down, that's it. That's all we've got in our file IDs. Much easier to search through that than it is if we come into the map and open this in Notepad++, and we have to try and search through all of this to find what we're looking for. That's just doesn't really there's no contest there. I'm going to edit it now before I get it into the map to save myself a lot of messing around. So the first thing I want to do here is have a look at the actual textures, and if we come into the mod itself here, we're going to look in the textures folder, and you can see here we've got a folder called languages_textures. So if we double click that and open it up, we can tell straight away that this is what we're going to be looking for within the base setup of the mod itself. So anything that's ANZEG default or fabric shield, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, probably not. Apologies if I'm butchering it to death, but so we're looking for something like that within our i3D for the actual mod to edit. So if I open up the actual i3D again in Notepad++, we can come through here, and you could do a search for it if you wanted to, but luckily it's somewhere right at the top of the page here. So we have our anzeg.dds and our anzeg default.dds. Again, apologies if I'm butchering the hell out of that. Now I know that the actual anzeg.dds is for our monitor, and that's the default one, even though this is actually default. This is the blank screen, what shows up with nothing on it. And then this one here is the one that actually shows us the information once it's started up and running. And I can show you that by opening the mod again in Giants Editor here. And if we actually come down to the monitor itself, and I come into my parts for the actual fabric script part of the setup, because these ones here are just the actual buildings themselves, the visible items. This is the actual cube that does all of the work as part of the fabric script. So if I open this one up and come into my player trigger here, you can see that our screen is highlighted, and if I actually open that one up, we've got this transform group called build shim. I don't know how you pronounce that again, but if I click on this one down here, because this is on display and this is the actual texture itself, with my material editing window open, again if this is not open, window, material editing, and then that will pop up. And with that highlighted, that cube in the scenegraph highlighted, if I come over to my material editing and diffuse texture, if I just hover over that, we can read through that, and it's actually saying it's in maps, models, buildings, clear work, texture, and anzeg.dds. So I know that that's what I'm looking for. And if I wanted to here, I could actually click on the little tab, whatever you'll call that, dot 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 box thingy there. And again with this one here, I could click on that one. And if I change this one over to the anzeg default.dds, we can see that that's got us all of our information. If I close that down, it will then actually display on the screen, even though it is actually upside down. For whatever reason, don't know why that is, but so if I then bring that back up again and go into the languages textures box and then click on the English version there and click open and then close it down, you can see now that's in English. Again, it's upside down. Trust me, in game it isn't upside down, it does actually show the right way up, but I don't know why it displays upside down there, but that's whatever, it's not relevant. So I know what I'm looking for there. Now that is actually displaying what I want, so I'm going to change this back to what it was before in here, because I don't want to change it in Giants Editor. What I want to do is change it within the actual i3D. So now I know what I'm looking for, and I can prove there that that's how I go about basically identifying that. I can close that back down again. So what I want to do here is I'm going to bring it into the map first. So in here, I'm going to go into the maps folder, I'm going to go new, and then I'm going to type mods in there. So I've created a new folder, called it mods. Then I'm going to create another new folder, and I'm going to call this Sewage Works, like so. I'm going to open that up. Then I'm going to open up this folder. You can see there's a lot of stuff in here that I don't really want to copy into my sample mod maps. So if I open up the maps folder, we've got some parts here, scripts and bits and pieces. So what I'm going to do is highlight all of that, and I'm going to Control C to copy that. So if I mess it up, I've got this as a backup on my desktop here, and I'm then going to paste it into my newly created Sewage Works folder. I can now close that down. We will go back into that later on to get some text from there to put into the mod desk and whatever. But now I can edit this within here without messing this one up here, because I might want to change that if I was perhaps maybe making a map and I wanted to have it a different language. I've got that unedited on my desktop there. So I'm going to do all the editing within my sample mod map. Just in this case I'm going to be doing it through Notepad++. So I don't need that because that's for that one. So I'm going to open this one up in Notepad++, and you can see here we've got our parts. So I don't want ANZEG default, I want ANZEG default _en. But obviously that's in a different folder. Now what you could do here is to keep your path file name somewhat shorter, because if we actually go into this, we've got models, buildings, clear work, texturing, where the ANZEG is, and the ANZEG default. But then we've also got this other folder I pointed out earlier on, languages _ textures, and then our part in there. Now what you could do is you could obviously type that in, but you could also just take this one from here and put into this folder. So all you'd need to do then is come back into here and just type on the end of there _en, because you're not changing anything else. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to keep it structured somewhat like this. So I'm just going to click in there and take the text from it, come back into here, and then I'm going to come into this one here, paste that in, put my / in, and then I'm going to go _en. So if I come back into here just to double check that it's spelt correctly. Perfect, that's fine. So that's that one set up for my monitor. So now my monitor will be displayed in English, so that's fine. So what we need to look at now then is the actual main sign, and change that so it displays in English. So we've got our fabricshield.dds there, and we want it to be fabricshield _en.dds, again in the languages _ textures folder. So again I can take the text from here, copy that, and then paste that in like so, put my / in, and then _en, and we can just double check that again, make sure it's spelt the same as this one. Yep, that's fine. So now we've got all that set up. What I can do is close that down and save it, and we can double check that we've actually changed it correctly by going back into the SewageWorks folder here, open the mod up in Giants Editor, and if we actually come around to the sign here, it is now showing up in English. So that should be fine. I won't be able to test the actual monitor until it's in game, because I've already got, I've already shown you that you can put whatever you want in there within Giants Editor. It's what the game will bring in, or the script will bring in once it's all up and running. So you have to kind of have faith there that it's going to show what you want it to show by changing that path file name within the i3D and Notepad++. But because this one has changed, then like I say, it's a good chance that it will be fine. So I'm going to close that down, don't want to save that. So now what I want to do is obviously bring this into the map. So I'm going to come into my sample mod map here on Sosnovka, and again what I'm going to do, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to do this because potentially I'll be importing more mods, so I want to separate them from everything else and not just have them all planted on the end of the scenegraph here. So I'm going to go create transform group. I'm going to click on the transform group, and then my attributes here, I'm going to rename that to mods, and then I'm going to go file, import. I'm going to go to my desktop, make sure I'm in the right folder. So I'm in my sample mod map here, maps, mods, SewageWorks, and then I'm going to double click on the actual mod itself. Then again with this highlighted in the scenegraph, Control X to cut it. I'm going to click on my newly created mods transform group, Control V to paste it in there. So now I can actually have lots and lots of mods within that particular transform group without them being all sort of, just stuck on the end of the scenegraph there. They have actually got their own transform groups. So with that sewage work transform group selected, it's somewhere over there buried under the map. I'm going to use the interactive placement tool, so edit, interactive placement, and I'm going to click on the map where I want it. Now the actual gizmo is not centered on the actual mod, so it won't put it exactly where you clicked, but you can just drag it wherever you want it. Again, for me, I want to rotate this a little bit, so I'm going to, in my attributes on my rotate y-axis here, I'm going to go 90, and that will bring it round to the angle that I want it at, and then I'm going to just drag it around with the gizmo until I get it somewhere roughly where I want it. Again, for the demonstration in the video here, it's not going to be overly important exactly where it goes, but somewhere roughly, and then just a case of bringing it into the height level that you want it, so you can actually get your equipment up the ramps without bottoming out and all sorts of stuff, and whatever else. And you may need to manipulate some of the numbers here within the actual attributes, so I could change this to something maybe a little bit higher. There we go, something like that to give me what I want. That'll be fine. So now we've actually got it into the map itself, we need to have a bit of a play with our particle systems. And if we actually open up the mod here and come into the main area, again, this is the part of the mod that controls all of the fabric side of it, the actual parts that do all the work. The other parts are just textures, important textures, you know, otherwise they just would be a lot of squares and numbers on the screen without anything attached to them. But this is the actual part that does all the work and makes everything come together and give us what we need. So in here we've got some work animations. If I actually go through these, so we've got our inputs. If we open this up, we'll open up our user attributes window so we can see what each one says. So our first and only input is our liquid manure. If we come into our outputs, we have one output over here, which is our compost, again, which I'm going to have to register as a fill type using the additional map type script in my case. Output 2 is our liquid fertilizer, which we can get from here, and then we have our fertilizer, our solid fertilizer, which we would get from here, and we can just drive our trailer in and get it from the actual fill spout there. So fantastic, perfect, that looks pretty good. Then, as I showed earlier on, we have our player trigger, so we come over here, when we walk into this trigger, it will then display in our F1 menu in the top left there what the fill types, fill levels are and what we require and all the rest of it, so that's fine. Then coming back into our work animations here, we have our particle systems. Now if we click on the smokers, you can see we have the smoker stacks here that will give us a smoke particle effect, or whatever you want to call that. And we have our attributes down the bottom here, which is our particle system file name and the actual path file name to that i3d. If I click in there and scroll across, we can see we've got our smokers.i3d in the particle system or PS folder. Now you could have a play around with changing that to wherever you've placed it within your actual map that you're going to be importing it into, but it's buried somewhere quite deep within all of this, so your path file name again is going to be quite long. So unless you've got lots of other particle systems for various other mods on the map in the same way that I'm going to do this, you may want to rename the folder or whatever else, call it PS1 or something like that. I don't want it to be there because it gives me, my path file name is just going to be stupidly long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually highlight that PS folder, which is where all our particle systems are located. I'm going to go Control X to cut it, and I'm actually going to come back into the maps folder here and paste it into there like so. Now my path file name is just going to be maps PS and then the actual particle system. So it cuts down my path file name quite a lot there, so it makes it somewhat easier to point everything in this particular direction to this folder. That's the way I'm going to do it. You can choose to do it differently, and have the massive great path file name if that's what you choose to do. But this is the way I'm going to do it. Again, with my scripts, if I come all the way back out of here, we've got some scripts that I will need to work with, and I'm going to take those. So again, I'm going to go Control X to cut that, come back out into my maps folder and paste them out here as well. That then gives me a really short path file name in my mod desk pointing towards my scripts, which we'll get into in a little bit. So coming back to the particle systems here, I'm going to change my path file name so I know that my path file name is maps and then PS. So if I minimize that, I can literally just click in here and delete this all the way back to the PS like so, tab across to lock in the change, and I can do exactly the same for all of the others. Like so, tab across. So let's just do these, and I'll be back once I've actually done all of these, because even though these are different, you've got Fire S and so on, the actual path file name is going to be exactly the same for every one of them. So I'll pause here, I'll be back once I've done all of these, because once you've done one, then you should be able to know how to do the others. Okay, so I've now altered all of these path file names for my particle system, so all of that's done. If we have a look in the actual sounds here and open this up, we have got some different sounds for various areas of the actual mod itself. These path file names will be generated and created automatically by just importing the mod into the actual map itself. If you want to have a look at those, you can come over to the attributes window, click on the audio tab and hover over that file name there, and it will actually show you the path file name. You cannot edit it, there's nothing you can change there. If I click in it, I can't change anything there. It's just, as I say, automatically set up by the Giants editor when you import the mod. What you can do if you want to is have a play around with the ranges. So range would be outside of a vehicle, in a range inside a vehicle. You can change the volume and so on if you want to have a play around with those, but otherwise I would just leave them as they are. They're all going to be pretty much the same on their whatever you call them over here, attributes. So there are some differences, but yeah, like I say, you can't really change much there, so it's just not really. I wanted to show you them, but yeah, can't really do much with them. So then we've got some shaders and bits and pieces. Again, you know, wouldn't necessarily mess around with that too much. There's no need to. And again, start index. That's just part of the actual mod itself, so don't need to worry about that. So we've pretty much got everything there within the actual map itself, and we've changed all the parts we need to change there. So it's not really much more, or there isn't really anything else we can do there. So what I can do now is actually, excuse me, I can actually shut this down. So I'm going to save it. Then what we need to do is actually bring over some text into the mod desk. Now, if you're bringing this into a map that's already got a lot of stuff on it, or it's whatever, you know, a created map, whatever, then there will be more than likely a lot more in the mod desk than what I've got here today, because this is again just a sample mod map that I've put together based on Sosnovka. So I'm going to open up the folder I've got on my desktop here, because this is where I've got the text that I need to put in. And again, I believe this is in different languages, I'm not sure. Let's have a look. Tend to be, that one's not relevant for what I need. I've got a funny feeling they're actually exactly the same. Yeah, they are. Don't know why we get two, but whatever. So, because the actual information inside them is exactly the same. But so this is what we need to bring over to the mod desk. So literally a case of highlighting the whole part here. We don't need the top part, just the information here. So we've got our extra source files, the actual script path file names, and then our parts and our L10N section that join everything together there. So I'm going to literally highlight the whole lot of it. Control C to copy it, come over, and then here I'm going to create a couple lines under the multiplayer section and then paste it in. And I'll create another line down here to separate that part. because I want to put my additional map type stuff down here. So we need to have a look, now that I've actually finished with that. Now, just to point this out, if you do actually have some scripts on the map that you're going to be adding this into, then you won't need the extra source files tags, this one and this one. You'll just need the information in between, and then change the path file name to suit where you've actually put those scripts. Again, if you've got L10N parts on your map already, you won't need this tag or this tag. You'll just need the information in between them. But because I haven't got any of it, I've had to bring over the whole lot. So you just need to watch on that, because if you put too many, or if you put extra source files tags twice, or L10N tags twice, it may cause conflicts, and then will ignore certain sections of the mod desk, and then not run stuff properly or whatever else. So just be aware of that. So okay, so I've now got that into there, so I'm going to go ahead and save. I need to change my path file names here a little bit. So if we come back into my sample mod map, if we remember rightly, I've put this in maps and then scripts. And we can have a look here, and we can see that this is actually spelt differently. It's actually spelt script with an E on the end and not scripts. So that's something I need to change there. So I need to go in here and just put an S on the end, deleting the E. Otherwise that won't work, because it will be looking for a script folder, not a scripts folder. But other than that, everything else is there okay, so that's fine. So I can go ahead and save again. So we've got that part set up. And yeah, there's nothing more that I need to do there with that particular part of the mod, so I can close that folder down. Okay, so the next part I need to look at here is my additional map types script, because I need to bring in the actual compost as a fill type. So I will try and remember to put a link in the description to that as well. Again, like I said earlier on, you could use the reg fill type script, so if you prefer to use that one, go with it, but you won't have tip on ground functionality. Possibly other things won't work in the same manner as the additional map type script. So again, for me, I'm going to go with this one. So I've got this on my desktop here, so I'm going to open that up. So I need to bring over the script itself, so I'm going to just basically put that over. Yeah, I'm just going to literally copy it over and put it out here with where my mod desk is, like so. If we actually have a look in the examples for the mod desk here, we can find some information here we copy over. So I need to bring the text over for the compost itself. So I'm going to highlight that, just that part, copy it, and bring that over, and bring that into my L10N section here. So I'm going to paste that in like so. Then if I continue on down, we've got our extra source file section, and because, like I said earlier on, I've now got extra source files tags, so I don't need those. I just need the actual path file name and the actual text here. So I'm going to highlight just that on its own, Control C to copy that, come back over, create a new line here, and then paste that in. And because it's in with my mod desk, I don't need to add any other parts to the path file name. That's perfectly fine. So if we come back over into the extra source files example parts here, I need to bring over the additional map type section for my compost. Now for me, the easiest way is to literally copy the whole lot, including the tags. So I'm going to come over below my L10N section here. I'm going to paste that in, create a couple lines and paste it in, and then what I'm going to do is highlight what I don't need and delete it, like so, just leaving my compost behind. I won't get into this too much, but you could adjust parts in here if you so choose to, whatever you want to do there. I'll leave you to play around with that. And we can now close this down because I don't need anything else in there. One thing to note here, that the actual additional map type section is looking for specific folders, and if you don't bring these folders over, then it will bring up an error within the console or in your log file. It may still run perfectly fine, but it will bring an error up. So even if there's nothing in those folders, the folders themselves still need to be there because it's going to be looking for them. So what I'm going to do here is save. I don't need this anymore. I'm going to close that down. And what I need to bring over is the build types fruit HUDs and tip on ground folders. So I'm going to highlight those in my additional map types 1.0.0.8 set up here. Control C to copy those, making sure that I'm in my main folder here where my mod desk is. Control V to paste them in like so. Then what I can do is actually open up the bale types folder, and I can then delete those if I so choose to, which I'm going to do because I don't actually need those. So I'm going to delete those. Again, that cuts down on any kind of additional user sort of resources or whatever else. Keeps your map smaller because you don't need them unless you're going to add them in later on, but I'm not going to, so I'm going to get rid of them. I'm going to go into my fruit HUDs. I don't need that one because that's just additional ones for carrot and stuff like that, so don't need that, so I'm going to delete that folder. Then I'm going to highlight all of the other stuff here under my compost and delete those, just leaving my compost HUDs because that's all I'm going to be bringing into the map here. So okay, so now that I've got that in there like so, I'm going to come back, I'm going to go into my tip on ground, and I'm going to do exactly the same. I want to keep my compost obviously because that's what I'm adding, but everything else in there I don't need, so I'm going to delete it. Done. Okay, so now that we've got that set up and we've brought over those parts, the other part I need to bring over are the particle systems, fill planes and so on and so on, and the textures that go with them. And the only reason I need to do that is because of the tip on ground stuff. And again, you could go in here and mess around with this, but I would leave it alone. Just bring it over as it is as a whole, because it will then again cause you possible errors. It still may work, but it will just bring up errors because it will be looking for textures that don't exist. So I wouldn't edit anything there, but it is required for the tip on ground function to work correctly and show the correct textures within your trailers and whatever else. Or if you want to use like the leveler sort of thing and push your compost around, or if you want to put it into a bucket or whatever else, or shovel loader or whatever, then you'll need to have these particle systems and fill planes for that to work properly. So yeah, so I'm going to literally copy over the maps folder, so I'm going to go Control C with that highlighted, come back over into my sample mod map, Control V, I'm going to merge the two folders, and then yes, I'm going to do that. If I open that up, we've now got our particle systems, fill planes and everything else in here, so fantastic. Okay, so now that we've got that into there, we'll have all of our functionality for our compost working okay. That will now register that into the map, and then we'll have our tip on ground functionality and all the rest of it. So okay, so excellent. So we've got all that. Lastly, what I need to do is bring over some map entries. So I'm going to open up this one here, the map XML entries in Notepad++, and we need to add in some files here. This is what we will have already, these parts, and I need to bring in these parts so that it then looks like this. And if I then minimize that one down, go into the map here, oops, maps, and in this particular case it's map02.xml because this is based on Sosnovka, but if it was a map that was based on Goldcrest Valley, this would be map01.xml, unless it's been changed by the creator or the author of the map. But for me it's map02.xml, so I'm going to open that up, and you can see here we have our additional files with our fill planes and particle animations. So what I need to do is bring over these sections here, so I'm going to highlight those, Control C to copy those, come over, create a new line, paste it in, and I'll just tab these across to tidy them up a little bit, and that will now add our extra particle systems and fill planes for compost, plus other things, but they won't be registered into the map, so that's not a problem. We're just looking to register the compost, but they're integrated into these material holders, so you either have everything or nothing. Just the way it is, unfortunately. So now that we've got into there, I can go save, close that down, close that down, close down Notepad++. Okay, so now I don't need this anymore. There's no more information from there that I require, so we've got all that set up into there. and we should be getting somewhere close now. So I'm pretty sure we've got everything set up there, so let's just double check. Got our scripts, got our information, compost, got our additional map types set up in there, so that's fine. Got all our particle systems set up in our maps VS folder here, so they're all joined together and everything else. So what I will do now is put this into the map, and then we'll have a look, and hopefully everything will work. So I'll see you in a little bit once we get into game. Okay, so here we are now in game, and I've gone ahead and bought some cows, harvested a little bit of the field over there, got some straw up together, got some water just so that they can give me some slurry, some liquid manure, and whatever else. And yeah, here we are as the building, so we'll jump into the tractor here, and I'll just drive around to the front of the actual, if you want to call it the front of the unit here. Oops, if I can drive, and we'll have a look at the sign just to see what that looks like. And we can see here, if I jump out, we can see that that is actually in English, and it all shows up perfectly fine. What I will do here is just bring up the, turn that off, so we have a HUD. We'll jump back into the tractor, and we'll come back round again. So if I jump out here, we can have a look at the actual screen, and it is showing the right way up. Now I've already put a little bit of stuff in here just to get it running, so I can actually make sure it was working before I hit record, just to try and keep the video as short as possible. But so I've already created some parts, bits and pieces in here, so you can see it is actually showing. So the numbers you can see there is the top one on the left is the actual input, and it will take a maximum of 800,000. And then we have the next ones down, which is how much I've put in there, and their maximums as well, which we'll see a little bit better once it actually turns the monitor on. So we'll jump back into the tractor here again, turn that off, and I'll come over to my cows here, and we'll get some liquid manure up together, and we'll then put that in, and hopefully everything will kick into gear this time round as well as in the past, so it should be fine. So we'll just come over here, we'll fill up with some slurry. I bought 100 cows just so I knew I would get a good quantity of slurry in a short period of time. I haven't created anything other than I've just, as I say, literally harvested a small amount of the field to give me some straw, and I went and got some water. So they've got something to give me back what I need. So they've not got any TMR or anything like that just yet. There we go, we've got enough, as much as we're going to get out of there for this time round. So we now swing on round and go and tip this into the unit, into the sewage works, and we can get it all fired up and show you all bits and pieces. So I won't take the stuff out, I'll just show you it actually working, and you can experiment with all the rest of it. So we come over here, bring up my F1 menu, it does then say press R to start filling liquid manure tank. So you don't get any kind of trigger display down here, but the box, the actual trigger box, is quite big, so you should be able to hit it quite easily. So we'll press R, and the slurry is going down. If we actually look in through the top here, we can actually see it does come in, and it starts to swirl round and round. Now I'd imagine this is just a limitation of the actual textures and what you can do with them animation wise, because they're turning before the actual rotor blades, or whatever you want to call these things, the separator blades are spinning. But you know, again, that's probably just a limitation of how we can get animations to work and whatever else within the Farming Simulator 17 game. So you just have to go with that. This one does actually have water in it, I believe. Yep, so this one has water in it. But once it does fire up, which shouldn't be too long now, if I get this back a little bit so we can see it all together. While that's doing that, we'll come around and have a look. So there we go, the screen's kicked in, so you can now see all in English, and it does display the correct way up. So sewage plant version 1, and we've got an interface with the fabric script and the version of the fabric script. Resources, liquid manure, the amount that we've got in there and the maximum, which is shown 1% there, of what 1% of what we can, of what we've put in so far. So we've then got our products, liquid fertilizer, 4%, and a maximum of 400,000 it will take, or will give us, sorry. Fertilizer, again, 200,000, which is what we can get out of it, and compost 200,000. So yeah, so that's all working fine, and that's how we basically, earlier on I showed how to change those textures so it does display in English, so that's fine. So we jump back into the tractor so we can actually look downwards, so we can actually see here we've got our particle systems, our water coming out there, we've got our slurry or liquid manure coming in here, I should say, like so. Over here we have some flames coming out of the chimney there, got all of our smokes working and everything else, so yeah, there we go, really good. What I will do is hopefully I've got a trailer around somewhere. Let's have a look. Tab out. There we go, this will do. If we get into this one, so hook this up, take that off. What I'll do is I'll just come under just to make sure we can actually get some fertilizer into this. I'm assuming that we can put fertilizer in the trigger into the tip of the trailer here. I've not actually tried this, so this will be interesting to see if this actually does work. So if I bring up my F1 menu here, come in, is that going to work? There we go. So we have fertilizer coming into there, so yeah, it does work. So we can stop that, so that's fine. If we want to here, we could also do control I, tip on ground, and it will then put it onto the ground for us. So all of that's working fine, there's no problems there. I don't know, let's have a look, see how much for what I will do is, what I'm going to do is I'll get a just to show you that it does all work, I will get a shovel loader of some description, and we'll get a bit of the actual compost, and we'll just test that the tip on ground function works for that as well. So I'll be back in a little bit when I've got that together. So I've got a JCB shovel loader, wheel loader, whatever you want to call this thing. So we'll just come in here and just pick up some compost if we can. So there we go, we've got a compost. It shows up in the actual shovel there, perfectly fine, looks really good, so excellent. So we'll just test this, make sure it does actually tip on the ground, there we go, perfect. So yeah, all of that's working perfectly fine, there we go, excellent. Now, like I said before, if you use the reg field type script, it will register the compost and you will have no issues there, but it will lack this tip on ground functionality. So if you want that, then the additional map type script is the way to go. So there we go, the sewage works, which I don't know, seems a bit of a silly name to me for what we're getting out of it, because we're not getting sewage, we're getting fertilizer, but whatever, go with it. I don't know, it's probably just a translation problem, but so yeah, all working, doing everything it's meant to do, giving us what we need, I guess. Great, thanks very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.